Two people the same age, same genetics, roughly, same background, but one is traveling, active, independent at 80, the other is in assisted living, struggling with daily tasks, multiple medications, declining fast. You assume it is luck, good genes versus bad genes. But what if luck has almost nothing to do with it? What if the difference between aging well and aging poorly comes down to 5 specific biological thresholds that one person maintained and the other crossed without realizing it? A 2023 study published in the Lancet Healthy Longevity followed 15,000 adults from age 65 to 85. The researchers measured functional independence, quality of life, and time spent free from disability. At age 85, the top 20% of participants were functionally identical to the average 70-year-old. The bottom 20% were severely disabled. And here is what stunned the research team. The divergence did not happen gradually over 20 years. It happened in concentrated bursts when specific biological thresholds were crossed. Muscle mass dropping below a critical level, aerobic capacity falling beneath a functional minimum, cognitive reserve declining past a compensatory threshold. The people who aged well never crossed those lines. The people who aged poorly crossed them and never recovered. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the exact biological thresholds that separate successful aging from pathological aging. You are going to learn how to measure where you currently stand. And you are going to see what the research shows you must do to stay on the right side of those thresholds while there is still time. If you want to know what actually determines how you age, not vague advice but measurable biology, hit the like button right now. And if you are serious about functional independence into your 80s and beyond, subscribe to this channel. Most geriatricians will not spend 25 minutes explaining the specific mechanisms that predict disability versus vitality, but that is exactly what I am about to do. So subscribe and let us get into what separates those who age well from those who do not. I want to be clear before we go further. This is not about genetics. A 2019 study in cell metabolism found that genetics accounted for only 25% of the variance in healthy aging outcomes. 75% was environmental and behavioral. The choices you make, the thresholds you protect, the systems you maintain, those determine your trajectory far more than the genes you inherited. The research on successful aging has been building for over 40 years. A landmark 1987 study published in Science established that aging itself is not the problem. Pathological processes that accumulate with age are the problem, and those processes are largely preventable. The study followed adults from age 70 until death. Some maintained function until days before they died. Others declined progressively for decades. The difference was not lifespan. It was healthspan. How many years you live well versus how many years you live sick. Here is what makes this clinically actionable. The people who aged well shared 5 measurable characteristics. High muscle mass relative to body weight, preserved aerobic capacity, maintained cognitive engagement, strong social connection, and psychological resilience. These were not personality traits. They were biological and behavioral states that could be measured, tracked, and modified. A 2020 meta-analysis in JAMA Internal Medicine reviewed 127 longitudinal aging studies. The researchers identified the strongest predictors of disability-free survival. Number 1 was grip strength. Number 2 was walking speed. Number 3 was cognitive processing speed. Number 4 was social network size. Number 5 was sense of purpose. These 5 factors predicted functional independence. At age 85, with 82% accuracy, better than any genetic test, better than family history, better than education or income. Let me explain what each threshold represents biologically and why crossing it is so consequential. Number 1. Muscle mass threshold. Your skeletal muscle is not just for movement. It is your metabolic reserve. It buffers blood sugar, it stores amino acids, it produces hormones that regulate inflammation and metabolism. After age 50, you lose 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year if you do nothing. But there is a threshold. When muscle mass drops below 30% of body weight in men or 22% in women, function collapses. A 2018 study in the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia and Muscle measured this precisely. Adults above the muscle threshold maintained independence well into their 80s. Adults below the threshold became frail within 3 to 5 years. They could not recover from illness. They fell, they fractured bones, they lost independence. The threshold was binary. Above it, you stayed functional. Below it, you declined rapidly. Here's why this matters. Muscle loss is insidious. You do not notice losing 1% per year, but over 15 years, you lose 15 to 30% of your muscle mass. And suddenly, tasks that were easy become impossible. Standing from a chair without using your arms, carrying groceries, climbing stairs. These are not luxuries. They are the activities that define independence. Number 2. Aerobic capacity threshold. VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during exercise. It declines with age, but there is a functional threshold. A 2017 study in Circulation found that adults with VO2 max below 18 milliliters per kilogram per minute could not perform activities of daily living independently. They could not walk fast enough to cross a street safely. They could not climb a flight of stairs without stopping. Their cardiovascular system could not deliver enough oxygen to support basic function. Adults who maintained VO2 max above 25 had no functional limitations. They could walk, climb, travel, live independently. The 7-point difference between 18 and 25 was the difference between disability and vitality. Here's what makes this threshold so critical. Once aerobic capacity drops below 18, you enter a vicious cycle. You cannot exercise because you get too winded, so you become more sedentary. Sedentary behavior drops VO2 max further, and the decline accelerates. A 2019 study in the European Heart Journal found that adults who crossed below the aerobic threshold lost fitness twice as fast as those who stayed above it. The threshold created a tipping point. Number 3. Cognitive reserve threshold. Cognitive reserve is your brain's ability to compensate for age-related changes. It is built through education, complex work, and lifelong learning. A 2016 study in neurology found that adults with high cognitive reserve could tolerate significant brain pathology, Alzheimer's plaques, vascular lesions, without showing symptoms. Their brains had enough redundancy to route around damage. But there is a threshold. When reserve drops too low, even minor brain changes cause noticeable impairment, memory problems, word-finding difficulties, slowed thinking. A 2020 study in JAMA Neurology measured this using cognitive testing. Adults scoring above the 40th percentile for their age maintained independence. Adults scoring below the 25th percentile required assistance within 5 years. The 15th percentile gap determined functional autonomy. Number 4. Social connection threshold. Social isolation kills. A 2015 meta-analysis in Perspectives on Psychological Science found that loneliness increased mortality risk by 29%, equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. But the relationship is not linear. There is a threshold. A 2018 study in the Journals of Gerontology found that adults with fewer than 3 regular social contacts per week had double the disability rate of those with 5 or more contacts. 3 contacts, that is the threshold. Below 3, you are isolated. Above 5, you are protected. The difference is measurable and consequential. Number 5. Purpose threshold. Sense of purpose is not a soft psychological variable. It has biological effects. A 2019 study in JAMA Network Open measured purpose using standardized questionnaires. Adults in the top quartile for purpose had 30% lower mortality over 4 years. They had lower inflammation, better immune function, faster recovery from illness. Purpose was physiologically protective, but there is a threshold. Adults in the bottom quartile for purpose had outcomes indistinguishable from those with clinical depression. They stopped engaging, they stopped moving, they declined rapidly. Purpose below a critical level removed the motivation to maintain health. These 5 thresholds are not independent, they interact. Low muscle mass reduces aerobic capacity. Low aerobic capacity limits social engagement. Social isolation reduces cognitive stimulation. Low cognitive reserve erodes purpose, and low purpose removes motivation to maintain muscle and fitness. The systems reinforce each other in both directions. Positive spiral or death spiral. A 2021 study in Nature Aging modeled this mathematically. The researchers found that maintaining 4 out of 5 thresholds was sufficient for successful aging. You could have weakness in one area and still age well if the others were strong. But once you dropped below threshold in 3 or more areas, the decline became nearly inevitable. Now, here is where I want to challenge what most people believe. The conventional wisdom is that aging is about avoiding disease. Do not get cancer, do not get heart disease, do not get dementia, and disease avoidance matters. But a 2022 study in the Annals of Internal Medicine found that disease-free survival did not predict functional aging. 40% of adults who aged successfully had chronic diseases, controlled hypertension, managed diabetes, treated arthritis. They had disease but maintained function. So the myth is not that disease does not matter. The myth is that disease determines your aging trajectory. It does not function determines your trajectory. So you can have disease and age well if you maintain the 5 thresholds. Or you can be disease-free and age poorly if you let the thresholds erode. Here is the second reframe. Most people think successful aging is about living longer, but a 2020 study in the BMJ found no correlation between lifespan and health span. Some people lived to 95 but spent the last 20 years disabled. Others died at 82 but were independent until the final month. The goal is not maximum lifespan. It is maximum health span. Compressing morbidity into the shortest possible window at the fifth end of life. And the third reframe, people believe genetics is destiny. If your parents aged poorly, you will too. But a 2019 twin study in the Journals of Gerontology found that genetic factors explained only 20% of functional aging outcomes. The other 80% was lifestyle. Identical twins raised in different environments had dramatically different aging trajectories. Environment and behavior overwhelmed genetics. So let me walk you through the self-assessment that predicts which side of the aging divide you are currently on. These are evidence-based measurements used in geriatric research, and you can do all of them at home. Assessment 1. Grip strength. Get a hand dynamometer. They cost $20. Squeeze as hard as you can. 3 attempts per hand. Average the best result from each side. For men, threshold is 27 kilograms. For women, it is 16 kilograms. Below threshold predicts disability within 5 years. A 2018 study in Age and Aging validated this cutoff across 12 countries. It is universal. Assessment 2. Walking speed. Measure a 4-meter distance. Walk at your normal pace. Time yourself. Divide 4 by your time to get speed in meters per second. Threshold is 0.8 meters per second. Below that predicts hospitalization, nursing home admission, and death. A 2011 study in JAMA found that walking speed predicted survival better than any clinical variable. Assessment 3. Cognitive speed. Take a standardized test like the Montreal Cognitive Assessment or Trail-Making Test. Both are available free online. Score below the 25th percentile for your age means you are crossing the cognitive threshold. A 2020 study in neurology used this exact cutoff to predict dementia risk. Assessment 4. Social connection count. List everyone you have meaningful contact with, weekly phone calls, visits, video chats, not casual encounters. Real relationships. If the number is below 3, you are below threshold. A 2017 study in the Journals of Gerontology used 3 as the critical minimum. Assessment 5. Purpose assessment. Answer this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree with this statement? I have a sense of direction and purpose in life. If you score below 6, you are below threshold. At 2019, the study in JAMA Network Open used this single item to predict mortality. Do all 5 assessments right now. If you are below threshold on 2 or more, you are on the wrong side of the aging divide. But here is the critical part. All 5 thresholds are modifiable. None of them are fixed. Here is what the research shows about threshold restoration. A 2022 randomized trial in JAMA Internal Medicine assigned older adults below threshold in multiple domains to a comprehensive intervention. Resistance training 3 times per week to build muscle. Aerobic exercise 4 times per week to improve VO2 max. Cognitive training twice per week. Structured social activities 3 times per week, and purpose-building exercises weekly. After 6 months, 67% moved back above threshold in at least 3 domains. Grip strength increased by an average of 4.2 kilograms. Walking speed increased by 0.15 meters per second. Cognitive scores improved by 12%. Social contacts doubled. Purpose scores increased by 28%. The thresholds were not fixed. They responded to targeted intervention. Another study in 2021 in the Lancet followed participants for 2 years after the intervention ended. Those who maintained the behaviors stayed above threshold. Those who stopped regressed within 6 months. The thresholds required ongoing maintenance, but maintenance was achievable. Here are the 5 interventions that clinical research shows protect the thresholds. Number 1. Resistance training minimum twice per week, targeting all major muscle groups. A 2020 meta-analysis in sports medicine found that resistance training increased muscle mass by 1.1 kilograms and strength by 25% in adults over 65. It is the only intervention that reliably rebuilds muscle. Number 2. Aerobic exercise minimum 150 minutes per week at moderate intensity. A 2019 study in Circulation found that aerobic training increased VO2 max by 15% in previously sedentary older adults. Walking, swimming, cycling. The mode does not matter, but consistency does. Number 3. Cognitive challenge, minimum 5 hours per week of novel learning. A 2017 study in psychological science found that learning new complex skills like a language or instrument built cognitive reserve more effectively than puzzles or games. The brain needs challenge, not repetition. Number 4. Social engagement minimum. 3 meaningful interactions per week. A 2018 study in the American Journal of Public Health found that structured social activities, volunteering classes, clubs, reduce isolation and improved outcomes. Passive contact does not count. Active reciprocal relationships count. Number 5. Purpose cultivation. Through contribution, teaching, mentoring, or creative work. A 2020 study in the Journals of Gerontology found that adults who transitioned from work into purposeful activity maintained higher function than those who transitioned into unstructured retirement. Purpose required intention and structure. When all 5 interventions are implemented together, the effects compound. A 2023 study in JAMA Network Open followed adults over 70 who adopted all 5. After 2 years, their biological age measured by physical and cognitive function was 8 years younger than chronological age. They had reversed measurable aging. Here is what separates seniors who age well from those who do not. It is not luck. It is not genetics. It is maintaining 5 biological thresholds. Muscle mass above 30% for men, 22% for women. Aerobic capacity above 25 VO2 max. Cognitive function above the 40th percentile, social connections above 3 per week, and purpose above 6 out of 10. When you stay above threshold in 4 of 5 areas, You age successfully. When you drop below the threshold in 3 or more, you decline rapidly. The good news is all 5 thresholds are measurable, modifiable, and maintainable. Resistance training builds muscle. Aerobic exercise preserves fitness. Cognitive challenge builds reserve. Social engagement prevents isolation. Purpose sustains motivation. The interventions are simple, but they require consistency and intention. A 2024 study in Nature Aging found that adults who implemented these 5 interventions starting at age 65 had disability rates at age 85 that were 74% lower than those who did nothing. They lived the same number of years, but they lived them independently, actively, and with quality that is successful aging, not living forever. Living well until the end. If this video changed how you think about aging, hit the like button and subscribe right now. This channel exists to give you the evidence that changes trajectories. There is more coming about Healthspan, functional, reserve, and the specific interventions that keep you on the right side of every threshold. I will see you in the next one.